Hi, everybody. I do want to apologize for being a little bit late. I had this small issue of construction on 80 coming back from State College. I was working at Penn State today with on a project with a friend of mine who used to be my advisor. So when you say, changing topics, she's been through many of them with me. But that put my other class, which is at 7 o'clock, about half an hour behind. And I had two people call in right at the last minute when I was hanging up to come to you guys, and I stopped in. So I had to hop back over and say, I made a mistake. I'll see you tomorrow. So I had a bunch of emails this week. So why don't I open the floor for some questions first and let you guys ask me questions, and then I'll answer the other things that I think maybe you want to know.
Go, okay? George.
George and I are like this already.
No, I'm going to let someone else go first this time.
Okay. Somebody else go first.
It was a tough read, but it took time, and it just takes a lot of time to do it. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the first book. The first book was easy, especially being science. I was like, oh yeah, and I flew through those sections. I didn't even hardly have to read them. But this one takes a lot more trying to figure out what the hell it's saying, and a lot more jargon that we haven't quite picked up on yet. So we're gonna have to build that jargon up a little bit to be comfortable.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I have to agree that the jargon was my biggest thing, as you already know, Jen.
Yeah. Now, which one was this? Was this the Cresswell one, or was it the other one that was linked?
The Cresswell one.
Okay.
Yeah, the first section, just setting up all the, because what Cresswell is, it's not a statistics book. It's how to do statistics. So he doesn't tell you what this stuff is. He expects you to know what it is, and he tells you how to do it, that kind of thing. And so it leaves out a little bit of the intro that we need a little bit of.
Well, it feels like we missed an entire class. Like a prereq.
Don't like that, because I think you should have 2 qual classes, and I would willingly teach the other one as well, because we are cramming it all in this one. All right. So Sarah, do you have a question too? And then I'll talk.
So I guess what we had to write for this past week, is there only one way to write that?
No.
Like the format we were given. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of looking like the framework and those things. Is there only one right way to write it? Mm-hmm. I don't know if I did it completely right or completely wrong. So.
You already lost me, Sarah, because I didn't know there was a format.
The one thing that I learned in this qualitative stuff so far, there is no rules. There are no rules. You can do anything.
No, there's a lot of rules. It just feels like they're not.
It's all perceptions.
That is true.
But you have to tell about the perception. You have to say all of the reasons why you're going to be biased, and make sure you're aware of all of those reasons, and then you can do whatever you want.
Kind of.
As long as you say,
correction.
Whatever I want, because it's what I want to do, and it's going to screw up everything, you're okay.
I would say that if you're playing backyard dodgeball, okay? Backyard dodgeball. Not in a rec league or anything, with all the neighborhood kids when you're growing up, okay?
I do that now with my kids.
And you've never played dodgeball before in your life. Ooh. And you walk into the backyard and you say, "Can I play?" And they say, "Sure." And then you're standing in the middle, and all of a sudden you have red ball welts all over your entire body, and you're laying on the ground curled in a fetal position. That's what qualitative methods will do to you if you don't have an idea of the way that you have to come at it. So I will say there's a lot of rules, but a lot of those rules are not ones like, if your p-value is less than 0.05, then it is statistically, I can't dodge a wrench. I have no dodging ability whatsoever.
Sorry, I couldn't help that once you brought up that subject.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah. Well, I learned how to play in PE whenever I was much younger, whenever they allowed you to have the little red dodgeballs that were blown up so they were hard as cantaloupe. And I spent a lot of my gym classes cowering in the back corner covered with welts. So now you know my secret story there. All right, so let's talk about qualitative methods then. First of all, with the assignment that you did for this week, number one, for anything you do for me, and this takes a little bit of the fear out of it, anything you do for me, you can redo it, okay? We do it, and I say, this isn't really what I was looking for. You kind of like skipped these 7 steps that I laid out for you here and did your own thing and your own idea. Why don't you rewrite this for me? And you'll say, okay, and you'll rewrite it for me, all right? And we can talk about it and all of those kind of things. But I really believe that to do qualitative research, you have to actually do it, and you actually have to understand how this works. And some people's minds are really set up with the quantitative paradigm where it's very, the statistics piece comes super easy, and this feels so loosey-goosey that you feel like you have no constraints, and it feels really wrong and odd. And I'm coming from a stats background. Like my master's, I had, I've done regression, structural equation modeling, all of these kind of things with statistics. And then I went in and met, like I said last week, met my advisor, and she was like, I'm a longitudinal ethnographer, which is like totally opposite of statistics. So, I mean, I understand how it feels. Like, I think my first entire semester of qualitative research, I think Dr. Fred told me no every week. I would say, is this a qualitative research question? And he would say, why don't we try it again?
What was your master's in that you had that kind of math?
I did an instructional technology master's from Penn State online, and I needed one statistics class, but I wanted to do my doctorate, and I thought that I was going to be a quantitative researcher. So I was taking my electives as my statistics classes.
Okay, because I took the master's course for the DET, or for the education technology here at CMU, and I didn't have any. Really.
No. The one that I went through is a couple class. It's like I think it was 36 credits, and we had extra methodology credits that were required in it, and we had to do a thesis defense and all of that kind of thing. So it was a little different structure to it than what our program is.
All right.
Our program is more set up on practical guidelines and not ones to push you into a doctoral program. So with that being said, there are rules. There are ways that you go about doing these things. We will learn these over the next 8 weeks before you start doing your own little bit of research. But we're going to walk into them carefully. And like I said, this is what I wanted from your position paper. I want to know where you think you see yourself. Do you think that you see yourself as someone who really looks at ontology and questions that work that way, and maybe you have a perspective, maybe you have a social justice perspective? All right, well, so if you feel like you're coming at it from this assumption and this framework, if I find an article that looks like it's going to fit something like that, then I'm going to shoot it to you. And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong for any of these. I'm just saying that there's different ways to look at things, and it's a good way to find where you think you are. And then at the end of the semester, maybe you'll find yourself in the same place or in a different place. So,
okay. So if we spent a lot of time talking about other stuff, but we eventually got there, we hit the mark.
This is my introduction to you. This is my introduction to where you think that you fit in the world, especially the world of qualitative research. And this is my introduction to how you write. Okay? So consider it that way. And I probably should have prefaced it with that last week, but I also don't want you to think that it's a blow-off kind of thing, because knowing where you're at is important. And you will use a small, out of the entire 2-page paragraph, or 2 paragraphs, 2 pages that you wrote, you probably use 2 paragraphs of that in your final paper to position yourself, but it'll be kind of distilled down from that. So you will use a piece of it later. It's not just a throwaway assignment, but it is an introduction. All right, so terminology. I sent you guys out the flashcard link. They have flashcards for the entire book. For those of you that like to know definitions and that we're going through and like highlighting everything and looking everything up, it can help a little bit. As you read through the book, what I would suggest you do is skim through it, kind of look at the assignment and what other pieces we're looking at. Skim over it again. None of the chapters are super long. I try not to give you more than 150 or 200 words max for a week to read. Most of the weeks it's much shorter than that. Plus your other work on the side. So read through it. We'll talk about it in class when we meet for classes. And we'll go over some of these things that you think you are and how you think you position yourself. But after this week, a lot of it goes into, we'll start looking at methodology, and then we'll be looking at skills. Like, what is an observation? What is an interview? And in that way, it kind of goes with my mind as being like science practices. Okay. So, you're learning the terminology now, the new language that you need to know. And then we're going to start talking about the skill set that you need to build and like how that works with what you're going to be doing. All right. Any more questions about what you did last week? Do you want me to close my eyes and Bob can talk? Then I won't know who said it. Was anybody not here last week to know the joke? No, you guys were all here last week. Jenny. Everybody's Bob. All right. Okay. So what you were looking at then this week, you were looking at basically the foundations of what qualitative research is built on. You were looking at the positions that people take and what they assumptions that they make whenever they start to kind of place themselves into this. And because, as some of you have said, it's loosey-goosey and there's not really a whole lot of rules, it feels like at first anyway, knowing how you fit into that situation is really important, because everything you do has a perspective. You will always have a perspective on things. And knowing that you're coming at it from this perspective means that you take the information that you're collecting, filters through the lens that you are wearing. So for example, coming from a quantitative class like Ming's, all of you are coming into this class and you're like, this doesn't even look like research because you don't have a p-test to, you don't have a t-test to run. You don't have any ANOVA that you're going to do that's going to say yes or no, this is the right answer.
But isn't it really difficult to self-assess yourself, to know what your own biases are and your leanings?
Sure.
I mean, that's like a deep meditational thing to try to figure out.
Awesome. I'm really glad you went there this week.
That's why
I don't know if I passed, but I went there.
That's why a lot of people actually think qualitative is harder to do than quantitative. I mean, quantitative is very straightforward and very methodical, and qualitative you have to be very aware of a lot of different aspects, and so it can be a lot more challenging on a personal level to do it and do it well than quantitative. Quantitative has the rules to guide you a lot more, whereas qualitative you have to make good choices and make good decisions, and it can make it a lot more challenging to do.
Yeah, well, I will say that I have some quantitative papers out. I have a survey that's structural equation modeled. So I have a quantitative paper, and I have a lot of mixed methods papers, and then I have one that is pretty seriously qualitative that we just published. And the one that was quantitative, once you learn how to push the buttons, the quantitative stuff is a lot easier because you can look at a format that says this is how you report your data. And as long as you are, as Todd just said, as long as you are following the guidelines that you're given, you can report these out and have your answers pretty easily. I will say that quantitative work can be very difficult setting it up, figuring out what to run, and figuring out how to cleanly piece out your variables and your covariates and those kind of things so that they work together and that you can report it cleanly and get your results nicely kind of packaged. But qualitative work can be very difficult because you are poking through things and making assumptions and pulling evidence. This last paper that we wrote, we actually had to write an appendice, which I've never seen them make us do before, but they did this time. That was kind of an audit trail. Everybody knows what I mean by audit trail, right? Okay, like if you're doing work and it could be like your web stuff, or it could be like the spreadsheet that you're using for doing your books for accounting or whatever. But we had to go through and we had to say, like, how did we get from these photographs that we used for our analyses to actually coming up with the work at the end? And we had to basically make them an audit trail with the memos that we had and the conversations that we had, pieces of literature that we read that we pulled in to use for our framework. So I've never had to do that before, but I mean, I think we have a really good paper out of it. And it probably made it a lot better for us to have to pick through and say, the evidence is coming from here, and this is the assumption that I'm making, and this is why I'm using the term epistemic engagement versus using the term student agency versus using the term, you know, whatever. And these are from the literature. Like, I'm a science ed person, so I do a lot of work in that arena, and most of you are not science ed people, so you're probably never going to use those terms. This is all going to be very situational based on your interests. So that means that you will be the subject matter expert, and I will help you make sure that what you are putting forth to me makes sense from the method perspective, like the methodology that you're using, how you are constructing these, and that kind of thing.
Is this also using statistics? I mean, you're getting data, you're making it, formatting the data. So aren't you still going to put it through an SPS package to crunch the numbers?
Nah.
Really?
What you can do, and a lot of people do, is they quantify qualitative data. So I might go, let's say you have...
That's what I thought you would do with it. That's why I say I thought it was harder, because it's a longer process to get to
you can. So we could look at 100 photographs that students took in class, and we could classify these as these are of the activity itself. These are the students participating in the activity. This is the data that they actually created in the class with this. You know, they were taking pictures of their data to use, and we could count those all, and that's one way we could code it. And then the numbers that we have there, we could run through a statistics package, and we could quantify the qualitative data.
So coding, looping, and grouping, and
yes,
classifying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But what we also might do is we might look at how the students talked while they were doing that. And we might say, Bob, look at this picture that I took over here. I'm going to put this one on the wiki. And I'm paraphrasing from the paper I wrote because it's fresh in my mind. I'm going to put this one on the wiki because it shows the actual data we had. This picture actually shows the procedure we followed and the chemistry equipment that we were using. But this picture shows us doing it, and that's important because people need to know that we are scientists too. So that little bit that I just talked through, maybe I would transcribe all the words out of that. This is coming later, by the way, in like 4 weeks. I would transcribe all of the stuff that they said, and the same way I went through the pictures and I coded the pictures so that I could count the numbers on it, I would go through what they said and I would say, okay, so here they're talking about seeing themselves as scientists. That's important. So that's one of my codes, identity. And here they're talking about using the technology use. That's another code because we're talking about how they're using the technology to support their learning. And so I would pick through what they said, the discourse that they used, and I would use that to create themes as well. And the numbers that I had from the pictures would support that. Maybe that would be a nice little mixed method study.
Well, it seems like you would have, for qualitative, for anyone to take you seriously, you'd have to have large numbers. And if you have large numbers, it seems like you have.
I read one today, study of 3. Computers and Education is one of the #1 education journals right now that uses technology whatsoever. They have like a 4-point-something ranking. Study of 3 students who were, we looked at like 10 papers today. It's mixing up in my mind, but there was an N of 3, and it was cognitive interviews. There's another one that was like N of 7, I think. That one was cognitive interviews with 7 journal editors on different journals and how they selected quality research to publish in their journals. So the N was 7, and they talked with them. Yes, qualitative studies often have less numbers because it's really hard to code a lot of talk. I mean, I've seen qualitative ones that had 30, 40 people in them, but a lot of times your number is going to be smaller. You don't have that magic N of 30 to make the study worthwhile. Yeah, it can be. So don't worry about that yet. This is all stuff for coming in the future, okay? This is all things that will, become known as we peel back the layers of qualitative research. what we were doing this week was just kind of looking at your perspective and how that kind of informs what you look at. Okay. So maybe you're interested in, looking at the way in which things are done. In that case, you might be really interested in the methodology. Maybe you are interested in looking at things from a social justice standpoint. Everything that you do, you want to really be working to make the world a better place. So your entire perspective is how this study pushes forward on that. Okay? Maybe it is that you're coming at it from a constructivist viewpoint, where you believe that knowledge is something that is socially constructed and that we negotiate what words mean and what terminology means. Okay? So think about that. How do you know that you know something?
It just what keeps on coming back to me is the low numbers of people, the subjects that you're working with. It just doesn't seem like the outside world would take it as a real study.
There are people that do not believe that qualitative research is anything that is legitimate. And there are people that believe that quantitative research with the numbers is always going to be skewed by the perspective of the person who is running the experiment, and that all it tells you is that this group did better than that group, and it doesn't take into account the conditions and the understandings that the people had coming in.
Well,
So
if you have that, wouldn't you want to do a control group and actually have a different researcher looking at the same information and do a cross-check?
Okay. So how controlled is a control group?
I don't know. There's always a limitation, but I'm just saying.
Okay.
If you do that type of thing, there's always going to be at some point you got to draw the line in the sand. But is that part of a qualitative study is to have if the bias of the researcher is such a huge piece of the puzzle, wouldn't you try to bring someone else in, or at least one or two other people to look at the same information with the same coding definitions based on, from their perspective?
So a lot of times when you're doing a qualitative paper, like a good quantitative paper, you can usually get away with 15 pages. Okay. Some of the qualitative papers that I have published are 43, 48, 50 pages. I think that the longest one I know of personally someone who has done is 73 pages. So a lot of them are a lot longer, and so that it allows them to lay out the other layers of evidence. In a qualitative paper, you are more than likely going to have to have it a good paper, triangulate your data. Okay, so I would look at the discussion that I was just talking about. I would look at the pictures and the quantitative, the quantifying of the qualitative data. I would look at the discussion that the students actually had and how those two pieces work together. And I would also look at the web page that they produced and how they structured it and what kind of text they put on there and all those kind of things. And I would track my data across all three pieces to show that it works and that it's supported in more ways than one. I think
some other examples and it's not so much in the qualitative research side, but qualitative data is particularly useful when you deal with behaviors. All right. If you wanted to establish within an organization what are the behaviors of successful people doing something, whatever that task is, then it's all qualitative data. You might draw it from different sources, be it experts in that particular field or supervisors of those experts and so forth, but you still arrive with a good analysis of what those qualities are, what those behaviors are, to reflect what we want to see when someone does that task. So, I mean, I think it's just an extension of, what I'm familiar with, which is job task analysis and competence development.
Very good example. Very good example from a different field. Thank you. And I would think of it too as people say that quantitative work is generalizable once you've met certain parameters, that it generalizes to a larger population because you make the assumption that all the people that you picked out of your data sample, that your population that you pull your sample from, you make the assumption that they fit these parameters, they fit this curve, that they
wait a minute though, you can't, because based on the quantitative stuff that I just came from, you don't have a representation sample that handles all the other groups of ethnic groups, cultural groups, age groups, because your sample size.
Draw your parameters, and you make the assumption when you do any quantitative work that your sample fits into this nice little bell curve parameter with a standard deviation on either side of it.
But I get in trouble every time I assume.
I know what it does. It makes a butt out of you and me. But so most quantitative work, though, makes that assumption. They assume that the population that you pull is going to be representative of the larger population, and that's why quantitative work is generally assumed to be generalizable to a larger population. That's why some people say that quantitative work is better research, because they say that it'll generalize to the population. With qualitative work, typically we don't make the claim that it is generalizable. We make the claim that it is what we've seen in this small sample, which can be similar to other samples. So Coops,
does it have to be repeatable like the quantitative?
You should be able to replicate it in a similar group in a similar place, but a lot of times you're going to say that it is within this small sample, and there will be principles that can be pulled from this place and applied to another. For the simple reason that they're similar. They have some similarities.
Does the researcher define where that can be applied to, what groups that would apply to? Similar groups? Because it's their bias that's being used.
Yeah, I think that more likely it would, from way out, I don't know. That's a really good question.
Well, I think in some instances the answer is yes, George. Because, for instance, if we were doing a qualitative analysis in regards to my earlier example of job task analysis or competence for a particular job skill, let's say we did a qualitative analysis on what are the competencies of CPAs, successful or effective CPAs. What are their competencies? And we studied this, and we came to these conclusions that these 8 skill sets really relate to the competencies of CPAs. Then we should be able to take that, and say, hey, we believe these are the general competencies for CPAs, and then you could test it in another. You could run the same analysis with another group to see if it's agreed. Okay, and you might find only 6 of them were in this other group. Okay.
Then the other thing you might do then is you might say, well, a CPA is a whole lot like a statistician. So these competencies, maybe they pull over to a statistician. So somebody else is going to take that and do another study and say, here's the framework I'm working from. Do these people have the same competencies? Yes and no. And then that's another qualitative study that's branching off of that, because you're taking this core set of competencies that were observed in one place that has a set of similar conditions, and you're able to apply it to another one that has some similar conditions, and it should be able to transfer some of them over.
And that builds onto the strength of the first study too, right? I mean, because you're saying, hey, it does apply. That makes it even stronger case that this is good qualitative work. Or if it doesn't apply, you go, well, that doesn't mean it's bad, but it just doesn't necessarily
transfer over. Yes.
So what I really want to do is do like a video thing or something like that, and have it automated, have a computer go through and find all the things that I'm looking for, and have them code it so I can get so I can have a bigger audience or subject group, and then run it through the quantitative stuff.
Well, you could. That's scaling up. What you are going to be doing is a very small scale study, because you have 4 weeks and you don't have time to do that.
But so is that something that someone that has done or does in qualitative and try to automate it?
I would say that people that do small pilot studies that are qualitative, and then do a larger qualitative study where maybe they go from like 15 people to 50 people, and then they may devise a way to transfer that. If they want to do 100 people, they're probably going to be looking for some quantitative measures and not necessarily the same things. So like Coop was saying about, here's your 8 competencies. Well, maybe at that point, after they've looked at a small group, a larger group, maybe a larger group in another set of conditions, and they're finding the same kind of things, maybe then they're going to develop a scale. They'll give it to 500 people. They'll structural equation model it, and then they'll use that to move on with a large scale research that's quantitative.
Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Okay.
I see the progression.
Doesn't have to be like that. You can do amazing qualitative work with a small number of people. Does not have to scale up to be able to be applied to other places. It does not have to scale up to make it good research. So I do want to draw that line, because otherwise I would be really insulting a lot of people that I hold very near and dear to my heart. So, okay.
Well, I have to ask the question because I just don't know anything. So I'm starting from ground zero. I don't know.
No, I'm telling you, this is the best discussion out of teaching this class 3 times and being a teaching assistant in a similar class, back when I was a graduate student. This is probably the best discussion I've ever had on the first night that I've ever had. So I really appreciate, I was told that you guys were going to make me work really hard, and I can see I'm going to have to work really hard to stay ahead of you. And that's amazing. So
hey, maybe we're moving up from the second best cohort.
I don't know if she knows about that yet.
No, I don't know that, but I'm laughing because I'm assuming that I would say it like this. Being a good qualitative researcher, I would say that you have your own set of parameters and that you are really impressing me with the questions that you're asking in a way that the other 2 cohorts have not done. How's that? I've not seen your writing yet, so I have no idea if you're good writers.
Oh, they're out the window now. She's going to see my writing and we're all done.
You're all going down with Bob.
If you let
all my spell check stuff and grammar, it's all out the window.
I will tell you that I wanted to be an AP English teacher, and my AP English teacher, because I'm old. I'm really old. I'll be 49 this fall.
You're old?
We did not have computers that had spell check. We just had to look all the words up. And my AP English teacher said, you cannot spell. You just turned me an entire essay on success, and you spelled success wrong every single time. Find a different career. And I went, okay. Chemistry is going to pay, I had an offer for chemistry to pay my way through my undergrad degree. I was like, okay, I guess I'll go be a chemistry teacher because I can't spell. And now I write papers for a living. I wish she was not dead. I want to take the paper and stick it on her grave.
Wow.
That's my son's story. Wow, it's right.
That's right. My son in the background, he's doing his stats homework and he's like, wow. Yeah.
My stuff is always the bullet points. That's how I write almost everything. I got to show all, board of directors and executive boards all the time in a pass. And it's like everything was short, sweet, to the point, move on.
Well, if you write everything as bullet points and then finesse it into sentences and then send your paper into the
that's what I do.
Yeah. They do their magic.
I start off with an outline, put it in bullet points, and then I just start writing in between.
Okay, so the first week you wrote me your position paper, and I'll be looking at those soon and getting them back to you. And I am willing to bet that none of you did anything so terrible that I'm going to say this really needs to be written again. Okay? I'm just going to say that off the top of my head. I don't think it will happen. Because like I said, I really am looking at this as an introductory and this person might need some more supports to use the Writing Center. Bob. The second week, you have 2 things to turn into me. You have a topic, an area that you think you might want to look at. It can be something you've looked at before. It can be something that you might want to investigate. It can be something that you've read about and you think is interesting and, maybe you want to play around with it a little bit. You can change your topic even within the class over the next 2 or 3 weeks, okay? After about week 4, it's really hard to change your topic, but it can be done, but it's a lot of extra work on your part because you already have your lit review kind of started. You are allowed to use papers you've used for other classes, writing papers if you pick a topic that works along with them. I'm okay with you using those again. For this week, however, I want you to pick 5 papers that are qualitative in nature, which means that they are either a qualitative or I can deal with a mixed method study, but I would like you to find 1 or 2 that are actual qualitative papers. Are you having trouble finding those? I know a couple of you started to look.
I have a question.
Sure.
For the assignment we were to do last week, were we not supposed to pick a topic? I feel like I'm working backwards, but how were you supposed to write that just based on not a topic, I guess is my question.
I will say that I did not intend that you had to have a topic to do it properly. If you happen to pick one and write around it, then I imagine that would be fine.
Okay.
I kind of gave you a self-profile.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Either one of those is fine. Go ahead, Robert. I'm sorry, I talked right over you.
yeah, I was having trouble finding a lot of qualitative. I mean, I found some, and then I kind of went through even the sources for those papers, and still had trouble find. I mean, I found 5, but
I
barely.
was really picky on what I asked you to do. I want them newer paper, at least a couple of them newer papers. I want some of them from high impact journals. I want them qualitative. That sometimes is like the perfect storm and you're not going to find it all. Okay. So what I would suggest is that you can do one of 2 things. If you find mixed methods papers that are using, for example, a survey and then some interviews, I will be okay with that for a piece of your work. I would like you to try and find one fully qualitative paper that doesn't use any statistics in it. Okay, just one, and I can deal with that. The rest of them can be mixed methods or something like that. Sometimes they're called exploratory studies.
Right.
Sometimes you can look up the word ethnography and they'll come up with that. Case study research is another set of terms that often will pull you good qualitative work. When in doubt, turn me in 5 papers that fit your topic. Explain to me what you've tried and what has not worked, and we will try and work out a solution for you, because I doubt you're going to use 5 papers only to write your paper with. I'd rather you didn't have 35 resources to write your paper with, just like I would rather your paper is 7 to 10 pages long. But I mean, I had someone in the first cohort whose name was Julie that was a librarian, and she was like, I just can't do it. I really can't turn this in. I will not turn this into you when it's not complete. I have my 7, because I limited them to 7 resources the first time I taught the class to really make them pick papers that were really applicable to what they were doing. And she's like, fail me. I have 35 resources. Give it to me. Yeah. She's like, fail me. I don't care. I can't turn it in with only 7. So I backed off from that. But some keywords that might help you would be case study research, ethnography, exploratory study, mixed methods design. Usually we'll have a piece from both. There is an entire journal of case studies. There's an entire journal of ethnography. There are interpretive studies. Those also come up with nice words if you don't have qualitative with it. If you just look for something that doesn't have statistics associated with it, a lot of times you'll find something that'll work with it too. And like I said, if you can find one, I'll be okay with that. And you can, start off with your 5 that are kind of like that. Yeah, Todd.
How do we know what are good quality journals and what are not? That if you could provide like a list of low quality ones, so I know who to apply for when I want to submit my paper, that would be very helpful.
Hey, I would tell you that I understand looking for low hanging fruit, but on the other hand, I feel that being as how you guys are the second best cohort, I can expect to see Bob applying for some pretty rigorous journals, in my opinion. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and I am going to okay, so if we go to Scholar, hold on. Okay, so we go to Scholar, and then we look up here in the corner, and we look up metrics. Here are top publications. This is of everything. There is nothing in here that I would even consider submitting a paper to, okay? So I go to view top publications.
I have a nature one. Woohoo!
Yeah, that nature one.
Yeah, I know.
You can get one into nature. If you can get one into nature, then you really don't even need to do this program.
Well, I do have a paper in nature.
Huh?
So does that mean I automatically get a PhD?
that you have a publication pulled from that to use as your resource, or you've sent one into Nature?
No, I have one published in Nature magazine.
Do you? That's awesome. I'm impressed. No, seriously. We just had a discussion on this because the project I'm working with Penn State is on genetics and genealogy, and students using personally relevant DNA data that they used with 23andMe.
Oh yeah.
Like 5th, 6th, and 7th grade students.
I don't know if paid advertisements are considered a publication.
They're not. But the one lady's like, well, I don't understand why the one lady we're working with, well, I don't understand why we can't just put it into Nature or something. That's the top journal. I'm like, oh yeah, we're just going to put it in Nature. All right. So under categories then, if we go to social sciences, this gives you social sciences ones, and you can see computers and education is the top social science publication. Then you can also go to subcategories. And for example, I'm in educational technology, so maybe these are ones that I would be looking at. Okay. Tech Trends is a really good one for shorter articles. By the way, they do a little bit of mixed methods or that. Australasian Journal of Ed Tech is actually looking at higher education technology. Learning Media and Technology looks at the learning processes. Online Teaching and Learning is a great one. A lot of you can probably find things if you're looking at technology in one of these top 20. If you're looking in the business sector, then you would have to go and look in the business sector for this. But if you're looking at, maybe you're a lawyer and you're looking at technology law, there's a whole section on that. You can see that these ones are the ones that have rankings within Google Scholar. Some people say you can't use Google Scholar, use a database through the library. I don't care. You can use Google Scholar. So what are some other areas? Like higher education. I know some of you are in higher education. There's the top journals in higher education. I've got to get a plug because I'm going to die here. So 1 second, and you can just stare at that for a moment. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that the Google Scholar had those kind of filters.
Oh, yeah. No, and I just unplugged your game. The extension cord that's going up your game? Okay. My cord is like a mangled mess. I'm trying. I can't get it piece long enough even to plug in. There we go. There we go. All right, thank you for bearing with me there. So then if you say like, okay, so the Journal of Higher Education might be one that I wanted to look for, then I would go back to my Google Scholar. And maybe I want to look for, where am I at? All right, go back to Google Scholar. And then I want to go to, I'm looking for my advanced search that we found last week. Maybe I want to look at ethical dilemmas in the workplace, and I want it to be in, and I want it to be from 2011 and up. Hit return. And if I spelled dilemma right, maybe I would have gotten some results. No, I didn't use spell check. All right, so then I would have all these articles that are placed in a journal that say higher education. Is that always going to be the one that is the ranked one? No, because the Indian Journal of Higher Education, I'm willing to bet, is not ranked at all. If something is in from Eric, and the only resource that it's in is Eric, it is probably not reviewed, which adds to the standards that it's held to. All right, so if I want to make it more perfect, return articles published in higher education. This is going to give me only the ones that say higher education. And again, there's a way to cut it down. And those should be all Journal of Higher Education. This one's South African Journal of Higher Education, but at least it gets it closer to what I want it to be. You may not find the perfect articles in this when you're trying to fit the parameters that I have. You're welcome to look outside of them. I just wanted you to have some practice at finding some really good, solid work. Hey, look right here. A qualitative study. And then right here, I can download the PDF right away, or I can do find it at CMU. And that takes me in to Smart Search, which I showed you guys the last time. Okay. This is found at CMU then. I could download my PDF. And if this was not going to work, if it would have given me only the abstract and I had to find it otherwise, then I would have went to the page that looks like this, dropped in my DOI, and then it would have brought it up. Let me see if I can find one real quick. Have you guys used this then? Have you used Documents on Demand?
No, but you did demonstrate it last week.
Right. I don't think I showed you walking the whole way through Iliad though. Give me 1 second and then I'll get you out of here, I promise. Okay, so let's say that we have this one right here. Higher Education Theory and Practice. And the PDF's there, so it's not going to help me. Okay, so the Indian Journal of Higher Ed, I'm willing to bet is not going to be, and there's no DOI on it, of course. All right, so I'm just trying to find you one that I can show you how to get the Documents on Demand to work easily. Autoethnography, here's another one that would be a qualitative paper. All right, so I'm going to copy my DOI, and then I would go to this link. And I'm going to leave it on article and put it in under my DOI and hit submit. Now I'm willing to bet that this is not going to come up as a PDF that I can download. It's going to say, basically, I can't get this for you. And I will tell you that the Central Michigan libraries are brilliant at this because I put in something this afternoon at like 2 o'clock and I had it before I left the office at 5. Say, get this for me. And then it brings you up this page that I call Iliad. This is what I call Iliad, but it's really Documents on Demand is what they call it. It's Iliad because it's interlibrary something something loan. It fills it in for you often. Sometimes you have to fill this in. If you have the DOI, I often put the DOI here because it helps them out a little bit. And then you hit submit request. And this will send it in, and then they'll send you an email that says, you asked for this, here it is. Okay, and they do this for you for free. Now, it costs the university some stuff, but you know. Okay, and then this is one I requested a while ago. I click on here to download it. This comes up in my email, and I can look and see like my request history. I use this all the time. Okay, you can do book chapters, you can do articles, and they will copy them and send them to you. Not the whole book, but the other pieces. Okay, so that's a really great way you can get some information if it comes up that you can't get it with your source.
When you requested that book, what did you get?
When I requested a book, I'm on campus, so they'll send it to my office because I'm a faculty member. In the
got
past,
a physical book. Okay.
I got a physical book. Sometimes they will give you the link to an online electronic version that they get from like University of Michigan, or, you know, University of Kalamazoo, if they are the ones that happen to have it, or Harvard. They also have sent me, so they've sent me a digital online book. They have also, Penn State mailed me, I'm about an hour and a half from them. When I was a student there, Penn State mailed me a physical book. I do not know the policy for a physical book for people not on campus. Yeah, you know, Todd?
Yeah, I just got the book for 814. They're mailing it to me. It'll be here on Wednesday, so I didn't have to buy it. So yeah, they have no problem shipping it to you.
That's exactly what I was getting towards, Todd. I was trying to see if I can get the PDF version.
Sometimes they will give it to you as a PDF. They'll copy you off chapters, but they typically won't make a copy of an entire book for you. They'll just try to get you access to the book in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, they don't have a PDF copy of that book, so I had to get the physical copy.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was just going to say, if would they deliver to Hong Kong?
Maybe. I don't know.
It
The
says for
amount
a
of time
fee.
it takes to ship it to you, I don't know if it would be worth your time.
Their policy was that it was free within the continental United States. Anything outside of that, you'd have to pay for. Well, you'd have to pay for the return. So they actually will ship it to you, but you have to pay for the return shipping.
Which still might be worth it for you. Yeah, I'm trying to get the link. Don't use that link. That was not a good link to give you. I'm trying to get you the link to give. I have this bookmarked because to go through the library, it takes you like 18 clicks. So that's what I typically use for my citation linker. I have it saved as a bookmark, and then I just type citation in there, and I remember it's /primo, and I click on that one. So if you click on that now, it should open on your computer, and then you'd be able to have it for you if you're trying to find things and you need to drop the DOI in. Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Yeah. Woohoo!
Very cool. All right.
Yeah. I'm the last one though. I'm the last one though, but
73 citations.
at least my name's on there. So
Yeah, definitely. Because like, here's my profile. I'm up to a whole 20. This first one, that's the one I won the award for. But you know, it's only been cited by 12. Todd's got 20, or got 73. All right, so any other questions that you guys happen to have tonight? Any questions that you have on what you're doing for the week? Anything that you want to ask about, talk about?
It looks like the week was just find the 5 articles, provide the citations, and give you a topic.
Right, and when you turn me in the 5 articles, I want the APA citation, which you can copy out of Google Scholar. That's what the quotation marks give you. I want the abstract of it, if you can get it. If you have to wait for documents on demand to get it to you, to get the abstract even, you can wait on that. And I want 1 or 2 sentences about why you think that this fits the criteria. This is a really great, you know, ethnography. This one has a mixed method study. This one's from a top journal, even if it's a quantitative study. I'm using it for one of my 5s or one of my 6s because I think it's going to impact me with the research. Just a sentence.
Can you say because it says it's a qualitative study?
Sure, definitely.
It had the word quality in it.
I've got a question, Dr. Jen, about the format. So the references is an APA format. What about the abstract? Because if we double space that, it's going to end up being lots of pages, right? So is it just the references you want APA, or do you want the whole thing APA?
I want the references cited APA. I do not care how you do the rest of it. Okay,
great. Wonderful.
Yeah, and when I say APA format for turning things in, I mean I want you to cite things according to APA. I do not care if you have a title page with all the fancy formatting with that and the table of contents. I want your citations done APA format for now. Later on, we'll worry about the formatting for all the other stuff. Formatting is like busy work. You know, the other stuff is what's important. I can't give you busy work. I don't have the time to give you busy work. So, you know, double space, single space, as long as I can read it, I don't care. Citationmachine.net is a good one. The Purdue OWL is the one I would suggest, because Citation Machine, NightCite, SiteWrite, all of those ones, EasyBib, tend to be a little wavy on occasionally on the other ones. And I would directly, like, honestly, pull them off of Google Scholar and take a look at them and see if they look at least kind of right. I'm not going to nitpick on this. Like, your final paper, I'll nitpick on, did you have all the spacing right? Are the right things in italics? Get as close as you can with this, and I'll make comments on it, but I'm not going to dock you huge numbers of points because you italicized the volume number and the issue number, and you forgot to not italicize the issue number. Okay? This is big picture stuff for right now. And I'm going to find you the link for the OWL. Here's the OWL APA formatting.
If you use Mendeley, the word plugin is really helpful also.
Yep. There's a plug for using the software I told you guys to look into last week. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, I did have a professor one time that for my husband's master's, they used what they called, what did they call it, Tommy? Formatting what the doctor had. I don't know. She used some kind of criteria thing, and she said 3 mistakes in any kind of formatting, commas, word choice, AP, like citations, and she quit reading the paper and you got a 0. Yeah, I won't do that to you. Just so you know, I don't do that. I don't believe in that.
That sounds like a different kind of class. You're not learning what the material is all about.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot more mistakes than that in published papers in high journals. I mean, that's so very important. Published papers in high journals have had more mistakes than that.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I almost always have some kind of mistake. Yeah, Zotero is great. Mendeley is really nice. Mendeley has a really nice word plugin. The biggest thing I like about Mendeley, and I don't know if Zotero will do this, you guys can tell me because I've only used it like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Mendeley, you open up the window, and let's say you have a folder that has 37 articles in it, and they're like the beautiful number, like titles like 10773BBBB17. You drag them all into your Mendeley window, and it takes out the metadata from it, or title words or whatever, and it'll label them all for you. Like, it was beautiful.
Yep.
Like, it was almost
everything from the PDF.
Mm-hmm. It was almost like tear-inducing after spending hours and hours and hours labeling things to know that it would do that. It's such a time saver. Any other questions? Anything else you want to ask? Anything else you want to talk to me about? Robert, do you know? Okay, Keith, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I know we're going to be very interested in doing observations and interviews, but is a meta-analysis out of the question?
I would say that a meta-analysis would belong in your dissertation 3 articles.
Okay. So it's not out of the question, just out of the question for this particular class.
Yeah. I would say a meta-analysis would be a great dissertation artifact. For this class, I want you to be able to interview, do some kind of observation, whether it is face-to-face, virtual, visual, or you come up with your own scheme of how you're going to observe a Twitter account or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then a document analysis where you're looking at something that somebody wrote, or a paper, or a handout, or a web page, or something like that, so we can triangulate across the 3 pieces.
Okay.
But your topic doesn't have to be settled down on what you're actually doing. I just want a general, like, I want to do something on ethical dilemmas. It's very open and very broad for this point. We're going to be starting to write research questions over the next 2 weeks, and then that'll narrow it in tightly for what you're going to hope to look at.
And again, just to clarify, we're not making up stuff. We actually have to do this contact people and do these interviews and stuff. Right.
Can't. Okay, so this is the last piece.
Summer, that's gonna be hard to do with teaching and stuff.
Well, this is the last piece I'm going to tell you. Okay. You can do something. Let's say like you have 3 teenagers at home and their 3 friends are always at your house watching video games. So for the purposes of this paper, even though you have no interest in it, you're going to look at video games. And you're going to interview those 6 people. You're going to watch those 6 people. You're going to write up your paper on those 6 people. Fine. Okay. That works. You can get this study done. You can do your work on that. So if you have no contact or context whatsoever in any other way, shape, or form, you can pick something like that. If you have access to 3 people and you can, 3 of your old students, you can email them and say, I really want to talk to you about your experiences with this virtual lab, this virtual simulation that I'm looking at. Would you be willing to talk to me about this? And they say yes. Then you can do your whole paper on that. So you can have you could talk to 3 colleagues. You could talk to your
we look for 3 different type of people or anything like that, like with the quantitative stuff, or you're trying to look for different,
Depends on what you want to look at. If you want to look at how 3 science people respond to a simulation and evaluate it for use in a class, then you would need to have specific people. If you want to look at a user interface on the computer, and see how different people who consider themselves at different abilities of technology use look at it, then maybe you could have your 7-year-old, your spouse, and your grandmother look at it. And then that would make sense to have those 3 different populations.
So it's almost better to have a group of them so that you can actually declare that group as this is a group of nerds or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
what you want to look at.
All right.
Okay, so with the possibility of publishing, because it's going to be a little bit more authentic, then do we have to think about the data and who we collect it from so that it's not too artificial and,
Okay. As you finish this class, when you turn me in your final paper, you will be turning me in an IRB form that could be submitted. Some of you will not have access to a population, and you will be using, so maybe let's say Todd wants to do that simulation, but he has no access to people that really would have any understanding of it. So he has 3 teenagers out of the neighborhood take a look at it and tell him what they think from a student perspective. Is that going to really be helpful for him as he's pushing forward in his field? Is it publishable? Maybe not. However, what I would like to be able to have you guys do out of this class is come up with something that is authentic enough that we can submit IRB, that you, at the end, not at the beginning, because sometimes it took us 6 weeks to do it. And in that case, it would eat your entire class up before you could start collecting data. So if you get to the end and you're like, oh, this paper is good. And I say, yeah, this paper is good. We're going to submit IRB. We're going to consent people retrospectively. So like go back to the people you talk to and make sure they sign off on it. And if they don't, there's nothing you can do. But hopefully they will. And then you can use it for like a conference presentation or something like that. I do not think you'll have a big enough study to actually get a decent article out of it. Could you get something out of it? I'm pretty sure that you could get something out of it. So we could talk about that more as we go along. But look at the fact that you have 4 weeks to do this in. All of your data collection, some initial analysis, things like that. Look at that time frame and determine what you physically are going to be capable of doing, and kind of frame what you're doing with that. So like really, if you can get a decent conference presentation out of this, that would be amazing. Do I think you have time to collect enough data to write up a good paper on it? You're going to have to work a lot afterwards, like past the end of the class, to really get that into, because we're just going to do like a quick and dirty analyses and write up your findings. You're going to have a lot of work on the back end if you want to try and publish it as a paper, in my opinion. I could be wrong. You could be magical and do it all the first time and like have this wonderful thing. But that's the way I've seen it happen. Is there have been a couple people at the end that were like, yeah, let's keep going with this. I want to do a conference presentation out of it. I want to try and publish this in like OLC or something like that. And like Jeremy had a presentation for OLC. Sharon's writing this up for publication somewhere. So there are a couple people that have done this retrospectively.
Yeah, but Jeremy's way out there. He's beyond everybody.
He's one of the superstars. He is very good. But do I think you guys can get conference presentations out of this? Yes. I think that the work that you're going to be able to do is going to be easily able to be a conference presentation if we can get consent going back. But if we try to do consent now, once you submit the IRB form and it's no longer just a class project, then you have to wait for the IRB to go through, and that killed people with their time frames for the first summer. Second summer, we submitted at the end for about 4 people, and that worked okay. So that's what we're going to have to do. Answer all your questions? At least for tonight? All right. Tomorrow night I have open office hours at 8. Other people show up for my other 2 classes that are running right now, but you're welcome to drop in then, or you can shoot me an email and we can talk email, or we can talk phone or whatever at any time if you need to.
Do the interviews have to be in person, or could you do them over email or
you can do them over the phone or over Zoom.
Oh, phone? Okay.
Yep.
And I just wanted to check. I think Dr. Ray doesn't have a Zoom session next week. Is that right? So do we? Oh, we do? Okay, we have a Zoom session.
Yeah,
okay.
I have it in.
It's on Wednesday.
I don't think so. Did I screw it up? Dr. No, I have it on 5. This is 5/6. No, this is.
I think it says at 8:30 on the 14th.
Yeah. For Dr. Ray, though, we don't.
Yeah.
So Dr. Ray, no session.
Right. He has structured it out so you don't have to meet as often.
Okay.
I'm trying to front load all the work, and then you'll have your 4 weeks where you're off kind of by yourself. We'll have one touch point in the middle, and you'll talk to me a couple times real quick. So next week we have a meeting. The week after that we do not.
Okay.
So the week after that is when I have it scheduled. There's a sign up genius for you to sign up for times. And if you can't find a time on that list that works for you, let me know and we'll try and find something that works. So you can see on here in the course materials under Zoom, we're running a little bit early because Ray told me at first he needed till 8:15 or 8:20 every week. And then he would kick you guys loose, give you time to get a drink, and then I could have you at 8:30. But he's been running a little early, so we're trying to move it up a little bit to get you out of here so you can have some night left.
For next week, are we meeting at 8:30, or do you want to meet at 8?
What do you guys think?
8.
Sure, 8 o'clock it is.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Here, look. There. The next thing down on it, right here, it says click to sign up here. That'll take you to the Sign Up Genius, and you can sign up. See all these nice little spaces I have for you? If none of those work for you, let me know. Okay, I tried to scatter them anywhere from early in the morning to later at night to give you some options. But if I happen to pick a day that is not going to work for you, I only picked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, just let me know. All right. Now, anything else?
I'm good. Thank you.
When you guys have a good night, I will post this up in the class in the folder that says online Zoom sessions. So you're able to access it eventually here tonight once it finishes rendering, and